Welcome into OutKick the show. I'm your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic, what is today, Thursday? NFL Draft Thursday. Get in on all the playoff action. Win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during hockey and basketball's postseason. Prize Picks even offers injury insurance so that if your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball, if you have a player exits the game in the first half, doesn't return in the second, Prize Picks will have your back, not count that as a loss. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, enormous selection of players and stat types. That makes Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. I love to play. You'll love to play. Download the app today. Use code OutKick for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code OutKick on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. That easy. PrizePicks.com. Use the code OutKick. Okay. NFL Draft. As we sit here, reminder, we're going to have a live show. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on Twitter. It'll be on Instagram. I don't even know all the different places it's going to be. OutKick.com, certainly, which you can now see over my shoulder there. You're going to be able to watch and learn, hopefully, from us during a live show during the NFL Draft. Going to start at 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Me, Chad Withrow, Jonathan Hutton, 6th and Peabody, downtown Nashville. And we'll be live, like I said, on YouTube, all these other streaming services. So you can flip us on as you sit down in front of your television and watch the draft and hear our conversation surrounding that. Okay, couple of things out there. It now appears there's not a lot of drama in the first 3 picks. Looks like we knew this was going to happen for a while. Caleb Williams going to go #1 overall. Jaden Daniels now off the board to go #2 overall to Washington. And Drake May, I was just checking the live odds on this. As I am speaking to you right now, Drake May is -280 to be the #3 overall pick to the New England Patriots. There's a report out there that the Patriots are going to take Drake May unless somebody makes them a great offer to trade up and be able to get that 3rd pick. Now, the cynic in me says, of course that report is out there. If you have the ability to convince someone that you are going to otherwise take the player that they want, you want everybody to write that story. But keeping that in mind, Drake May now favored to be the overall #3 pick. And if you're out there and you're saying, okay, I'm going to bet Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, 1, 2, 3, it's now -240. These are live odds if you have to slot all 3 of those in. By the way, top 5 overall picks. Marvin Harrison, a big favorite to go #4 overall, but there is a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen at 5. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but I wanted to tell you, Marvin Harrison, #4 overall. That is #4 overall is the Chargers, right? Am I correct in that? Who's got the 4th pick this year? Adam, look up who's got the 4th overall pick. But Marvin Harrison, -370 now. If the Chargers end up, I believe it's the Chargers, drafting #4 overall. Sorry, the Cardinals. That's right. The Cardinals are 4. 5 is the Chargers. And that's where the draft really kind of gets started is, to me, around #5. Nobody seems to know exactly what's going to happen there. There's a possibility J.J. McCarthy. There's the possibility Joe Alt, J.C. Latham, Malik Neighbors. That's where things really kind of get interesting. So what I would say to you, and we'll be talking a lot about this starting at 8 o'clock Eastern on our live show, J.J. McCarthy appears to be the pivot point in this draft. Are the Vikings going to trade up? There are reports that the Rams might be interested in trading up. How much actual interest is there in Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy? Could the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh even been in the mix? I know they got Justin Herbert. I know there's been a lot of crazy talk about that. My point is, it feels like the pivot point on this draft comes down to, does any team make an aggressive play to get up into the top 10, maybe even the top 5? Now remember, the Vikings draft overall at number 11. They need a quarterback. Kirk Cousins is out there. Their backup quarterback positions, the Josh Dobbses of the world, did not distinguish themselves at a high level. And so the Vikings are there potentially needing to trade up as well. You don't know. The Giants could be in the play for a quarterback as well. Again, J.J. McCarthy is the pivot point. Overwhelming now odds maker belief from a gambling perspective that there could be a move outside of that top three if those three quarterbacks go early. And just for reference point, Arizona expected substantially to take Marvin Harrison Jr. Chargers probably could use a wide receiver, which is why if I'm going to give you my top 6 or 7, what I would anticipate happening as all of this shakes out. Chargers need a tackle. They also need a wide receiver. Giants, what are they going to do at 6? They could take J.J. McCarthy there. Titans going to go probably wide receiver, or most likely, I think they're going to take Joe Alt. So here is my projection as we sit here looking at the way things are going to go. Carolina, we know its pick belongs to the Bears, is going to go with Caleb Williams. Washington is going to take Jaden Daniels. New England is going to take Drake May. That seems very likely. I think Arizona stays there at 4, and I think they take Marvin Harrison Jr. Try to give a little bit of weapons to that offense. Kyler Murray, there's still a lot of uncertainty. He got a lot of money from the Cardinals, but I don't think there's a lot of people who really believe he's the long-term answer there. But if you go get Marvin Harrison Jr., who may be the surest thing in the draft in terms of his performance, at 5, do the Chargers go tackle or do they go wide receiver? Or is somebody going to trade up and give a king's ransom to try to get into that top 5 and make a play for J.J. McCarthy? To me, starting around 4 is where that uncertainty starts. I would kind of bet that the Chargers go Malik Neighbors, personally. And then I think that would put the Giants, although there's lots of J.C. Latham talk. I've seen a lot of J.C. Latham picks for the Chargers there at 5. Then that would give the Giants the opportunity to go J.J. McCarthy if no one jumps them, if they like J.J. McCarthy, or they could trade back. Again, I think the Titans, they could trade back, but I think they take Joe Alt. I would bet on the Titans taking Joe Alt there at 7. Remember, Minnesota also has a later first-round pick, so they could use that as ammunition. Maybe they have to get up if they think J.J. McCarthy is their guy. My point on this, and trust me, we're going to be talking about it in great detail, the drama surrounding the NFL draft. The Travis boys love mock drafts. My kids, 16, 13, and 9, are going to be watching like crazy. J.J. McCarthy is the player that I would put a star on and say, hey, he's the one you need to be paying attention to going forward. Okay. That is my NFL draft analysis as we break this all down. I told you yesterday that, in my opinion, I like Jaden Daniels the most. J.J. McCarthy, and I'll talk about this a bunch tonight, to me, has some Will Levis in him. What did he really do in a game that ever made you say, wow? Big arm, big kid, strong athlete. But if I watch games, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May all had wow moments for me. Doesn't mean they're going to be great NFL quarterbacks, but I watch a lot of college football. There were points in time where I saw them and I said, that throw's crazy. Or that play, Jaden Daniels getting out of the pocket, making plays with his feet. Drake May, the amount of offense that he had to put up sometimes with a very, I would say, mediocre defense and not necessarily incredible talent around him. Some of the throws he made, I said, man, now also had a little Brett Favre in him, put the ball up for grabs a bit too much maybe. So that's the way that I would analyze those guys. But J.J. McCarthy, I never had a wow moment. Okay, couple of different stories that are out here that I think are significant. Maybe the most consequential case on presidential power in my life, and I am 45 years old, argued today in front of the Supreme Court. Great quote from Justice Gorsuch, who said, "We're writing a rule for the ages." Really what you're trying to figure out is, what is the limit of presidential powers as it pertains to the official job of the President of the United States. And within that scope, there are some actual easy agreements. You might have heard us talking about it on Clay and Buck. We've been talking about this for a long time. If the President of the United States picks up a paperweight on his desk and dashes someone in the head with that paperweight and kills them, the President should and would be responsible for murder. That is not an act within the scope of presidential powers. But what if the president, let's say, orders a raid on a compound and a bunch of innocent people get killed like happened to David Koresh? I still think likely to be protected within the scope of presidential powers, but a more difficult charge. So, and certainly ordering a raid on a terrorist organization, either inside or outside the United States, would be well within the president's powers. I think most people would agree with that. So how do you contemplate the Jan 6 charges that have been brought by Jack Smith? I think they're illegitimate. I've told you if I were on the jury in the Alvin Bragg case or in the D.C. case or in the South Florida case or in the Atlanta case, I would vote not guilty because I think it's an awful precedent. It's very important to remember that what the Supreme Court decides in this case will govern long after all of us are gone. It is a precedent that will define presidential powers for hopefully the next 1,000 years. I hope the United States, a powerful country, 1,000 years from now, I hope they're still looking at the Supreme Court case from here and applying it, because that would mean that American powers had durable length of time, and also that American jurisprudence and the value of precedent has remained, the rule of law has remained preeminent. I think that what should happen is Supreme Court should punt. I would vote that Jan 6 was within presidential powers. And I would toss all of this Jack Smith case, and I would toss all of the Atlanta case personally. Because I don't think this rises to the level of a crime that should be prosecuted. I believe we should leave it to the American voter, 150 million voters. I also believe if you are concerned that the president is violating the law, that's why the impeachment power exists. If you believe that the president has behaved in a manner that is outside the reasonable duties of the president of the United States, then you go to the House impeaches, and the United States Senate votes to convict, and he is no longer president of the United States. I mean, that's why the impeachment process exists. So there is a mechanism to hold a president accountable for actions that the United States government, Congress itself, believes exceed the scope of his powers. So I don't think that we need to get into the nitty-gritty here. I also believe the Supreme Court is just trying to find a way to avoid having this trial at this point in time as we get ready to all vote in November. So I think the biggest takeaway from this case, again, I would vote to say this is presidential immunity. This is covered. We don't need to decide an exact line, because it is a difficult line to draw where presidential powers begin, where they end. All of those things are very challenging, which is why I would say we have the ability to impeach if we believe a president has exceeded the scope of his power. But what I would say as it pertains to this issue is, and by the way, credit to the argument, there were lots of points of American history. What about FDR putting the Japanese people in containment camps? What about the decision of Abraham Lincoln to suspend the writ of habeas corpus? Would those have been considered criminal-related actions? What about George W. Bush going to war in Iraq and saying there are weapons of mass destruction there that end up not being there? Where is the criminal liability when it comes to conspiracy, when it comes to fraud, when it comes to obstruction? All of those things, I think, are fascinating questions. I don't believe that anything related to what Trump did related to January 6th is criminal in nature. But I think what the Supreme Court is going to do is kick it back for a fact-finding to Judge Chutkan on whether or not these were official or personal related behavior. And that will then mean that this case will not go to trial before November, which will mean only the Alvin Bragg case is actually going to be resolved in New York City, which I think is going to put a panic into Democrats, because what I believe they have done is elevated Trump and actually hurt themselves. And I think Trump's going to win in November, partly as a result of these charges that were brought to bear here. So that is my analysis of the actual case that's going on right now. I don't know how many of you saw this. Maybe we can clip and share it. Yesterday, we talked about Joe Biden saying 4 more years, pause. He read directly off the transcript like Ron Burgundy, 4 more years, pause. On the official White House transcript, they pulled the word pause out and said it was indecipherable. Again, it's a relatively minor thing, but if we had an honest media, they would call out the White House stenographers for directly changing what was said in that case. 4 more years, pause, is what Biden said during his speech yesterday. They said 4 more years, indecipherable. No, he read directly off the transcript, pause. And this is part and parcel to me of lies that are spread and easily distributed. And I'm seeing some of this now on the campus protests. People are saying, you don't support free speech anymore. People like, I'll get an email or I'll get a text or I'll get a tweet or whatever it is. And this is so dumb, okay? But let me start here. I believe, if there's any doubt, you should be able to say incredibly offensive things on campus and be able to remain a student. I think you should be able to say in a protest, I support the Ku Klux Klan. It's borderline. I think you should be able to say it and have free speech rights and not get kicked off campus. I think you should be able to say, I don't think gay people should get married. I think you should be able to say, I don't think that that a man who pretends to be a woman is a woman. I think you should be able to say all sorts of things. And by the way, on the flip side, I think you should be able to say, I believe Donald Trump belongs in prison for the rest of his life. On campus, you should be able to say those things. You should be able to say that you think that the Jewish people are committing genocide in Gaza. I think you should be able to say that you believe that the terrorists in Hamas should be wiped off the face of the planet. I think you should be able to say all of those things, march in support or against them. By the way, both sides. You should be able to say, I hate the KKK. I think they should be shut down. Robust, uninhibited discourse should exist on campus. But you should not have the right, and for people out there who've not watched or listened to my show for a long time, I don't think you should have the right to come and stand in my front yard and protest. And I don't think you should have the right to protest personally outside of a Supreme Court justice's home in a neighborhood, even if you're off their lawn. I don't think you should be able to shut down a road in front of a Supreme Court justice's house, Democrat, Republican, Independent. I don't think you should be able to shut down a road to the airport and block it, no matter what your political beliefs are, okay? You can be a robust and uninhibited supporter of the United States First Amendment in this country and understand that you don't have the right to trespass while making your statement. So I don't have any issues at all with people who are trying to put up tents on campus being arrested. Whether you're putting up tents on campus because you're upset that Donald Trump is being charged with crimes, or whether you're putting up tents on campus because you want to have an opinion about what's going on in Gaza. You don't have the right to trespass on university campus property. I thought the chancellor of Vanderbilt wrote a great piece laying this all out in the Wall Street Journal. I think that is the position that reasonable, intelligent people should have as it pertains to free speech on campus. A couple of other things. Front page New York Times. I've been on this, and I know Elon Musk talks about it. Very few other people do. Everybody wants to talk about climate change. To the extent that I am worried about anything, relating to humanity in the decades and in the hundreds of years in the future, it is, nope, we aren't having enough babies. The United States all-time rate of birth hit a new low, according to the front page of the Wall Street Journal today. The average woman is having only 1.62 babies. I believe the replacement rate is 2.1. We are in danger in the United States of, for the first time since we have become a country, beginning to have more deaths than births in this country. And this is happening all over the world, Japan, Italy, many different Western democracies out there are dealing with a profound collapse in population, and it's happening even in communist countries like China. They had the one-child policy for a long time. Chinese population over the next 100 years, I think it's around 1.3 billion. It's now projected to drop by half. Global populations over the next 100 years are expected to begin to collapse. We may even have already hit peak world population. Babies are, among other things, amazing. I've been fortunate to raise 3. I wish I had more kids than the 3 that I do. I think the most important thing that you can do as a man or woman, notice I said man or woman, still 2 sexes, is have as many kids as you can and raise them as functional, happy, productive members of society to then go forth on their own and multiply. We're not doing it. All-time lows. Babies are an endorsement in a belief for the future. And this is a big conversation. I think it's an important one we should be having. Lots of young people in America and lots of young people around the world in Western democracies have no faith in the future of humanity. We have beaten them down so much with the idea that Western democracy is awful and racist and misogynist and unsupportable on an intellectual level, and that climate change is going to kill everyone, things that are not true. Certainly COVID fallout is part of this as well, that a lot of people don't want to have kids. We're also, I think, this is important and lots of people don't want to talk about it, both men and women are failing. They're failing for different reasons. Men are failing because they don't know how to be men. They don't know how to grow up. They don't know how to take care of families. They don't know how to be the head of a household. They don't know what it means to be a man. They're betas. They don't have high levels of testosterone. Women don't find them attractive. They don't find themselves attractive. They curl up in the fetal position, create anonymous accounts on social media, and sit around playing video games and failing at life. I understand if you are a young woman in your 20s, why you would find many men out there unappetizing and unappealing when it comes to starting a family with them. I also think simultaneously, this whole girl power, yay, is actually leading women astray too. Because what it's teaching them is you should be concerned about only your career. And you go to college and then you go to grad school. Women are overwhelmingly getting advanced degrees and undergraduate degrees compared to men. And they're getting decent jobs. And then they look around and they're 32 or they're 35 and they're single because they can't find a man that they want to be in a partnership with. And they freeze their eggs and they're panicked because they're not going to be able to have kids. I had my first kid when I was 28. Wife was 30. I wish we had had more kids. I'm very fortunate we started when we did because it can be hard to get pregnant when you're in your 30s. And depending on how old you are when you have your first child, it can be very difficult to have a second child. And certainly having a third child becomes even more challenging. Now, women are more aware of the child rearing aspects than men are because candidly, if you're a successful man, you can have kids in your 40s. You can have kids in your 50s. You can have kids in your 60s. That's the biological reality. So men don't feel the same level of pressure to get married and have children as women do. And so I think we need to have a major national conversation about gender roles, and about how to create more babies in the United States. On a larger scale, I think we need to have a conversation about how to create more babies in the world. Everybody's running around terrified of climate change, and as a result, the world population is collapsing. Now, it's going to happen after I die, probably. But I talk to my boys about this all the time. I want them having as many kids as possible. One of the things that's gone awry is we've got so much stupidity out there that I thought this was emblematic of that stupidity, and I flagged it. This is from today's New York Times. Big story in the New York Times about NPR, and the challenge is that there is a major issue at NPR because the organization, as we talked about earlier, I think Berliner, the guy's last name was Berliner, wrote a piece like everybody at NPR is a left-winger. He checked the registration. I think it was 76 Democrats in editorial in Washington, D.C., 0 registered Republicans. Irving Berliner, am I right about that? I think that was his name. And they fired him at NPR for publishing a critique. Well, now the New York Times, which is ironic because New York Times also a left-wing organization, is examining this story of DEI struggles and the collapse of NPR's business. And there is a headline that says, I'm reading from the article that is up today at NewYorkTimes.com. How are we supposed, Yuri Berliner, by the way. What did I say his name was? Yuri Berliner. That sounds like a made-up name, by the way. Yuri Berliner was the NPR guy who was fired. There is a story at New York Times today that says, this is a quote, how are we supposed to support diverse programming, actually commit to DEI, and make it not a folly when this company seems scared to talk about money when it is not a $30 million deficit, the head of NPR said. And they're talking about whether they're giving enough support to different diverse shows. After this guy said, he urged employees, the head of NPR did, to be more mindful of, quote, civility in their questions. Civility, basic decency, kindness, being civil to others. An NPR employee then wrote that the word civility is often used as a cudgel against people of color, calling the language choice racist. If you call for civility at NPR, you are racist, according to an NPR employee. After the meeting, there was a human resources complaint filed against the head of NPR, saying his remarks about civility amounted to dog whistle racism. The complaint was referred to an outside law firm which didn't recommend punitive action after reviewing it. Lansing has announced his retirement. They've replaced him with this crazy chick, but he declined to comment on all of this. But you know that you have gone off the woke waterfall when the word civility is being established as a dog whistle, according to NPR employees. This is why I always say, America is not going to be destroyed by external forces. It's going to be, if it happens, destroyed by internal forces. And on a smaller level, your company is not going typically to be destroyed by external forces if it's a somewhat successful company. It's going to be destroyed by the people you hire, who then destroy the company from the inside, Trojan horse style. I think about this a lot. I don't own OutKick anymore, but I think about this in terms of the people that we employ. And if I start another company in the years ahead, you can bet yourself that I will be aggressively monitoring every single hire we make in the early days of any other company that I am involved in. Speaking of other companies, Crockett Coffee. Go get your Crockett Coffee today. Love it. Amount of support that we've seen for the coffee company is off the charts. Be back live with you in about 4.5 hours? Is that the math here? I think it's about 4.5 hours, 8 o'clock Eastern. Appreciate all of you. NFL Draft is here. If you want to put a star on a player, it's Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. He's the pivot point for this draft. Always think it's important to think about that. This has been OutKick the show. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I will see you guys maybe tomorrow, although I may take off. I don't know. I got so many shows that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. I'll see you soon. I'll see you tonight in about 4.5 hours. See y'all.